Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934. It is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans.
Max Durbus Realtors has been providing commercial and industrial real estate services to its clients for nearly 100 years. Since 1934, Max Durbus has been locally owned and operated throughout the greater New Orleans area, including the North Shore, Hammond, and even the Mississippi Gulf Coast and beyond. We focus on your commercial real estate needs so you don't have to. More information is available at 504-733-4555. Inspired by the culture and spirit of New Orleans, the contemporary abstract and figurative work of Tony Mose and the urban expressionist art and jewelry of Tracy Mose are now on display and available at Esom Art Galleries. Esom Art Galleries are artist-owned and are located in Uptown New Orleans on Magazine Street and on Royal Street in the heart of the French Quarter. Esom Art Galleries, inspiration from the soul of New Orleans.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime Sports. Hey, I'm your host, Scott Alexander, and oh yes, it's that time of year again. The NFL is back, and boy, we'll get to the Saints in a second, but the big news was last night. How about the Aaron Rodgers train? Everybody's been talking about this opening game against the New York Jets versus the Buffalo Bills, who've had the best record in the NFL other than the Kansas City Chiefs over the last 4 years, including 13-3 last year. So the build-up was magnificent. The Bills got stopped on their first series. The Jets got the ball. Everybody's anticipating. And then 4 plays into it, Aaron Rodgers goes down right here on a nondescript tackle. And we just think maybe it's a knee, maybe it's an ankle. He'll be back on the second series. And then all of a sudden he doesn't get back up. You'll see he falls to the ground right after this. And he sits down and he doesn't come back. And he has a torn Achilles, which is the freakiest injury of all time. It happens and people get it in plays that you don't even understand how it happens, but he is out for a full year, so we're not going to get to experience anything about Aaron Rodgers, but the game, which was boring most of it, turned out to be exciting. And the Bills were up 13-3 until this play right here ends up tying it up at 13 when Garrett Wilson made the most incredible catch in the end zone, and it looked like it was going to be intercepted or at least batted down. He pulls it down. That ties it up and changes everything in this game. They kick a field goal to go up, and then right here, the Bills kick a 50-yarder as time expired in regulation and made it, and that put it in overtime. It was a doink that looked like it was not going to go in, but it went in, and then in overtime, here we go, Xavier Gipson, a rookie, returns a punt for a touchdown, and all of a sudden, the Jets win and take victory from the jaws of defeat. So congratulations to them. Too bad that their superstar quarterback will not play. But let's talk about the Saints, because that's what we care about. We're going to talk a lot more about the Saints during this show. But right now, let's just say this. This was a great win, and I mean great win. They might have looked a little sluggish in the first half. That's a new offense, but this defense absolutely dominated in a game that had the most field goals in NFL history for week 1. That's because nobody get in the end zone. You only had 1 touchdown this game, and that was Rashid Shaheed. That's a tongue twister, but he got in. But the defense, you saw right there, that was Derrick Henry getting bottled up in the second half. The Saints defense just dominated this game. They held the Titans to 5 field goals. They got 3 themselves, plus 1 touchdown, 16-15. Great victory against one of the best opponents they're going to have all year. Let's go to Tulane Green Wave, because we're going to have Reggie Reginelli, a Tulane superstar back in his day, going to talk about this game as well as his career. But Reggie loved being a part of this Ole Miss build-up. 2 teams that were ranked, great matchup. And then, Tulane's quarterback, Michael Pratt, could not play. Kai Horton came in and did an admirable job, giving this team a 17-7 lead. And it looked like, wow, who was the SEC team out here? It looked like Tulane. But then they end up losing at the end. Some freak plays that ended up making it 37-20. You see they outscored 27-3 in the second half. A freak fumble gave that score, made it more than it was. How about LSU scoring 72 points? We're going to talk about that with Jack Culotta later as well. We're also going to talk about NOLA Gold with my man Van Gallinghouse. But I got to also tell you, how about the U.S. Open? Coco Gauff, first-time winner, 19 years old. And then Novak Djokovic, who won his 24th Grand Slam. Congratulations to those two. And here, coming up next, Primetime Sports. Don't go anywhere. Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. And when you hear Reginelli now and you're under 40, you might think pizza, because I certainly still do. But the fact is, when I was growing up and I was in junior high school, there's a guy at Newman that was just killing it. And he was a running back. His name was Reggie Reginelli. His dad was the head coach at Newman. He's a legend, Tony Reginelli. And then he went to Tulane. And by the way, he's the only running back in Tulane history to beat LSU 3 out of 4 years. That's right. They beat LSU in 1979, 1981, and 1982, and they only lost once back in 1980, but that was quite a feat. And Reggie Reginelli is kind of a schoolboy hero around these parts, and I've been wanting to get him on this show for a while, and I'm so happy he's here. He played with Rock Hannes, who I was just at on the show, and obviously he played with a guy named Nicky Hall. I believe that's the quarterback's name, right? But anyway, Here he is right here, Reggie Reginelli. Welcome to the show finally, man.
It's good to be here,
How you
Scott.
doing, brother?
I'm good. Glad to be here.
So I got to ask you a couple questions off the bat. Growing up, you're about 4 years older than me. You know, you look up to the older dudes. You know, you had Sean Toohey over there at Newman. I was at De La Salle. You had you at running back. Growing up with as a coach's son, because I've asked this to Sean before as well, and Sean was obviously a basketball star at Newman. Was there pressure to you to play football, or you just loved it from the very beginning?
No pressure at all. I mean, you got to remember, back then we played all sports, right?
Yeah,
you played,
absolutely.
Sean actually played football for a little while too.
Right.
And baseball, he ran track. I mean, you did it all.
Right.
So we played 4 sports, and it wasn't because we had to. We loved doing it.
You loved it.
Yeah. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have TikTok. We didn't have any of that stuff.
We certainly didn't have TikTok.
We were outside doing things, running, sweating.
4 seasons, man. I remember that so too, because it's like once one ended, it wasn't even you had a favorite. Like the next one ended, it was just natural that you were right into it and you loved it.
And that's the beauty of it, because you never got tired of a sport.
Right.
Because you rolled into another one, and all of a sudden that sport became your favorite sport.
Right, during the season.
And you know, I love football probably more than any of them, but when you roll into basketball, I love basketball. Baseball, love baseball.
Yeah.
And it was good.
I mean, playing 2 sports wasn't a common thing in college, right? I mean, you were kind of the Bo Jackson of our local area. I mean, think about it. There wasn't a ton of people, right?
No.
And you played both football and baseball and did it well at Tulane. What was that like?
It kept me busy. I did not have a lot of free time.
No.
Especially on the weekends.
Right.
You know, all my friends were going out on the weekends and having good times and all that. My nights were either Wednesday or Thursday. I go out for a little bit, and then you know, I had to get back to business.
Well, I'm gonna have to say there was one weekend I think you might have had a good time, and I just found out about this last night. There, you on the program. I hope that's your 33, right? If it's not,
that's me. Well, supposedly.
Yeah, right. But the fact is, I was watching the Monday Night Football game with Dickie Brennan last night, and he was talking about that big win. Your final game, you know, first of all, you went 9-2 your first year. What a phenomenal year that was. You went 7-4 the second year, 6-5 the third year. And y'all's schedule is unbelievable. And no offense to the schedules that being played now, but every game, it seemed like, was against a Kentucky or SMU when SMU was really good. They were top 10. And I mean, it was low down. You know, you played Penn State in that bowl. I mean, Missouri. It was all against named teams. And I could go on and on. And I'm leaving out a few of the really good ones. But Clemson. And that was a tight game. But you played them all well. You played them all well. But here's the thing. That last year, y'all, you know, had some injuries, and you weren't having the greatest year of as the team did before. But you went into LSU, and this is a seminal moment that I know, and I say seminole not Seminole. It's a seminal moment for you because you got the game-winning touchdown. You got 2 touchdowns in that game, and LSU was 8-1-1. And let me take people back because they had just beaten Florida State. The Oranges are being thrown on the field. They're going to play Nebraska. They moved up to number 5 or 6 in the country, and they are just looking at y'all like this is over. Heavily favored. And you said, you might not remember last year when we beat you 48-7. Well, you came back and beat them 31-28. And I want you to talk about the game in a second, but apparently you didn't go home back to New Orleans that night. You hung out in Baton Rouge and had a really good time.
I did. I stayed with Dickie and Kyle France and Mark Zetzman, those guys, and we had a ball. I did. In fact, it's kind of funny. So Vince Gibson, everybody was on the. Back then, you took a bus back.
Right.
And that was my last game ever. So Vince grabbed me, said, "Come on, you got to get back on the bus." I'm like, "Coach, this is it for me. I got buddies that we're going out." And he looked at me. I'll never forget. He looked at me dead in the eyes. He said, "All right, go ahead, but don't tell anybody."
Don't tell me. I love it. Those 3 guys you mentioned were all. I joined the fraternity the next year. They ended up being 5th-year seniors at that point, and I ended up hanging out. And 2 of them went to De La Salle with me, so I knew them well.
Yep.
But the fact is that game. Let's just take you back because I don't usually like to start with the senior year first, especially when your freshman year was so good. But that moment, I got it. You're a New Orleans guy. You grew up knowing about LSU, Tulane. That was a rivalry back then. I mean, people that are young don't know about it. You had to pick a side.
Yeah,
and
it was huge.
And I hated to pick a side because I really, truly loved both. My father spent time at Tulane. My brother was at LSU. I liked both, and that was a rivalry. But talk about that rivalry and your position in it, and then that final game.
Well, first of all, I like LSU as well. I mean, a lot of some of my friends hated LSU all the way just because of the rivalry. I respected the guys that I was playing against. I was friends with a lot of them. And so when I wasn't playing them, I wanted LSU to do well. I still do. They're fun to watch. But for that week, you're right. It was a rivalry, and that's what made it so much fun. You look forward to that game every single year. You wish you could have 11 of those games. That's what college football is all about.
Yeah.
So, that last year, we were heavy underdogs. I think like 24 points.
That's a lot.
Yeah, but the one thing we had going for us is that, like you were saying, we had a lot of injuries throughout the year. Besides the first game, the last game of the season is probably when everybody got back and was healthy.
Yeah.
So, and we also knew we had beaten them pretty good the year before. So we knew that if we could put it all together, we had a shot. I wake up Saturday morning, it's storming outside.
Oh my goodness.
So that kind of neutralized the feel a little bit. So all of a sudden that was another factor, I think. It was a well-played game. I think there was only 1 turnover the whole game.
Yeah.
But everything kind of fell into place, and we pulled it off.
I mean, let me say this. You played for Vince Gibson, he just mentioned, and he was there for 3 years. But your freshman year, you come in, did you have any idea you were going to play so much? I mean, you had like 800 yards from scrimmage. You scored touchdowns. You had a big year, and Tulane was huge. I mean, they got up to 15 or even higher in the polls, going 9-2, and then 9-6 lost to Penn State. I believe it was at the Liberty Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, this is Penn State, man.
I know.
John Capoletti. I mean, all these guys, we grew up watching those guys. What was that like, dude? I mean, you're from New Orleans. You saw them in the Sugar Bowl when you were a kid.
That was my freshman year. It was an eye-opening experience. I mean, it's a big jump.
You had Larry Smith, the head coach.
Larry Smith and Lindy Infante was the coordinator.
Right,
and Lindy, at the beginning of the year, switched me from tailback to fullback because he had decided, and Rock told me this the other night.
Rock Hannes.
When I saw him before the Ole Miss game. He said, yeah, Lindy and I were talking, and he told me, this kid's going to play this year because he can catch the ball. So he moved me to fullback, and Rock and I, we got connected on several
And that's
passes.
when fullbacks carried the ball a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't like it is
Not with
today.
Lindy Infante.
No, you caught
He
the
was
ball.
wide open.
Yeah.
He was good. Very good.
But that year, though, I mean, it was special. I mean, you had Rodney Holman. You had some big. Lionel Washington came in with you.
Yep.
Y'all had some big-time players. And you did some big-time. When you look at that schedule, I mean, this is SMU with the Eric Dickerson era. You've beaten them. I mean, you were knocking off team after team after team. And this is no mid-majors. I mean, I'm talking about all Power 5 conferences in there.
Yep. No, we always played Ole Miss. We played SMU, TCU, Florida,
Yes.
Clemson, Georgia Tech when they were
Georgia
pretty
Tech almost every
competitive.
year, and they were really good.
It was a competitive
And you beat
schedule.
Ole Miss more than they beat you. I mean,
I think we tied
You-
2
2-2.
and 2. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
you were up 2-1 at one point. I know
Yes,
that.
we were. We
I mean, this
should've-
is Ole Miss. I'm not saying but they're SEC. I mean, you know, you're competing and beating them.
Yeah.
John Forquet was a big name.
Yep.
And I believe I have a shot at him getting sacked in the dome, and I know he didn't like that.
No, he was a stud, but no, we got after him that day. That was my freshman year. Yeah. Oh, I see. Yep. I don't forget that. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
What a great shot.
Yep.
But I mean, but you, what was it like playing for your home team, though? I mean, you're in your home city. You know, a lot of times these guys go, and even Baton Rouge is 70 miles away, but you're right here where you grew up, and you're playing for the team you saw growing up. I mean, and you're having success.
I love New Orleans. I knew I was going to probably stay here.
Mm-hmm.
Why leave and go somewhere else?
Yeah.
My dad's from Mississippi. If I had left, I probably would have gone to Ole Miss.
Yeah.
But forget my dad played at Tulane as well.
Right.
There's a little bit of a legacy there. Played Tulane. He played at Tulane football.
That's Tony right there.
Football and baseball, yeah.
25-year coach at Newman, I believe.
Yeah. He was an all-SEC catcher.
All SEC catcher.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So he played both sports?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so this is he's getting in some Reginelli way. I see that in the background. That's him on the right, I believe.
Yep.
Future home. Like, I mean, he was synonymous with Newman. There he is with the Mannings. And I don't need to get into the Mannings too much, but the fact is that was his last team, I believe, with Cooper and Peyton for sure.
Peyton, his last
Peyton.
year, yeah.
Yeah. So talk about that relationship with the Reginellis and Mannings, because I think that's interesting to me.
It goes back a ways. I'll never forget when Archie got drafted. I think one of his first speaking engagements was he spoke at the Newman's Dad's Club meeting, awards banquet. That's what it was. And I'll never forget. I had a chance to meet him. I must have been 6, 7 years old, and that was a highlight. And Archie, as usual, handled everything well. He always kept in the backdrop, but if he ever had questions or needed help or some advice, he was always there. And it's a great family. And and my dad thinks the world of him, and obviously Cooper and Eli and Peyton.
They're all great. I mean, I'm hoping the best for Arch. You know, I think he's in a great situation. He's backing up Quinn Ewers right now, but that's a team definitely on the rise. They just beat Bama, and now they're going to go to the SEC, and everybody's presuming that he's going to have the job next season. But the lineage there, I mean, it just seems like there's a lot of lineage when I look at, like, you know, your basketball coach at the time was Toohey. His son, you know, we talked a second about Sean. Now, Sean Toohey, it's like a family affair over at Newman back in the day.
It worked out that way. We hit it at the right time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't change anything. I mean, Sean and I grew up as gym rats running around while practices were going on. My dad, and actually Coach Toohey, coached football at the time.
Yeah.
We were there all summer, you know, all throughout the school year we'd be there at the gym. And so whether we were shooting baskets or hitting baseballs, we were always doing something, so it was good.
I got to ask you a question, because, you know, Sean's the all-time SEC assist leader at Ole Miss, right? All-time.
Yeah.
Still, I mean, at least as of 10 years ago, still, and I think he still might have it. You had great success in 2 sports at Newman. Then y'all are a little private school, right? And then you're popping in with a guy named Randy Livingston, who is one of only 5 players in the history of basketball, period, to be 2-time National Player of the Year in high school. Then you have Peyton Manning, followed by Eli Manning. That's 4 Super Bowl championships, 3 Super Bowl MVPs among them, or at least 2.
And then there's this guy named Odell Beckham.
Odell Beckham Jr. Exactly. I mean, how does this little school just keep putting out not just NFL players, the best at what they do? And NBA.
Very, very fortunate. Yeah, you're exactly right. I've thought about that. A tiny school to have that number of professional
with
athletes.
high academic standards. I mean, obviously, it's like the Duke of getting into Newman is not easy. It's like the Duke of high school sports. So it's amazing. Before I go on, what does Reggie do now? Because I mentioned I teased you with the pizzeria. Reginelli's has been a landmark now for what, a quarter of a century? It feels like it's been around a long time.
25 years.
I just guessed that. There you go. Yeah. Your brother Daryl was in my class. I mean, I wasn't at Newman, but so I knew him socially. Yeah. Tell me how this has sustained so well.
It's worked well. Like I said, 25 years ago, I practiced law for about 25 years.
Right.
And during that time period, Daryl was in the restaurant business and decided he wanted to go out on his own, and so I helped him, and we worked together with it, and he handles the day-to-day, and thank God I don't, because he's doing a good job with it. I let him do that. I did some of the work with legal work and stuff, but it's freed me up to do some different things now. I like to dabble in some real estate.
Right. So it's paid off.
Yeah, it's worked out well.
Good for y'all. Because I remember y'all when you branched into Baton Rouge, and I'm seeing you around. Do you know how many stores you have now? 7. Yeah. Congratulations. 7. Because sometimes you get too big, and it changes things. And y'all have kept it at a nice number. I think that's a good number.
That's a great point. I had a good friend of mine who was in finance in Boston, and he said, "Reggie, what are y'all doing? Y'all should have 500 of these throughout the country."
Yeah,
and he deals with big numbers, and he doesn't understand. It's not easy to control your business that way. So
it's not easy at all.
Yeah,
and I know Ty Graves is feeling some of that with his chain, because everybody loves that raising canes, right? But I was in places in LA, and the people there can't stand it. They're like, "This is the worst," and I'm like, "Really? You think so?" And he goes, "It must not be the same as what y'all have there, because you lose a little bit of
quality control.
You lose some of the quality control, and it's not easy." But let's go back to what's going on now, because I think it's a spectacular time in Tulane football history. We all remember the 14-0 game, right?
Yep.
I think that now has been eclipsed by the Cotton Bowl, because it's a national thing. For us locals, and Tulane hadn't won in 25 years back in 1973, that was big. I was definitely all Tulane at that point in my life. I still have Mark Oliveri's chin strap from that game. I say it all the time.
Nice.
But he handed it to me on my brother's shoulders. We knew him a little bit, and we got it. So, but when you look at what they've doing lately, and I'm going to go to this Ole Miss game here, the build-up for this game was something I haven't seen in a long time. The Tulane game against Ole Miss. But it's only because of the success last season. You win, thrilling games. You beat Cincinnati, obviously, to go to the championship game. You beat UCF, who you avenged the only loss you had in conference. And then you go to beat the Heisman Trophy winner, Caleb Williams, who I just had a USC game 2 days ago. 3 days ago, but it felt like 2 because it went into Sunday morning. But the fact is, this guy is bar none one of the top 10 players. He'd be quarterbacking in the NFL right now. That is how good he is. I'm blown away. I went to his practice, and it's not like your defense handled him or anything. But the fact is, you beat his team, and this is a team that was this close to going to the Final Four of the NCAA, playoff.
Absolutely.
So you, as a Tulane football alum and a guy that went to school there, and y'all have a great alumni base, by the way, a great one. And I love how close you are. But as a former player, tell me what that means to you.
It was, for the first time in a long time, I mean, it's so exciting to be a part of that program. I mean, I was texting some teammates the Saturday morning of the game. I said, guys, I'm nervous as hell about this game. In fact, I feel like I'm nervous like I was before every game I played in.
Right. I love that.
And it still hurts that we didn't win that game, because we had our chances. We were there, man. We had a chance. And even with the backup quarterback, who played well, we had a chance. We had, but
who are your first texts? I want to know that. Who are the guys you text on the team?
I was Clinton Wenzel,
Yes.
Mike Arata, Lionel Washington, Rodney Holman's on that text.
Every one of those guys has been on
Jackson.
this show.
Oh, look, and what was so cool with Coach Fritz this past year is after the Cotton Bowl win, the spring game, he invited all the alumni back, and to see so many former players come from Florida, Pennsylvania,
To come back.
other parts of the country.
Yeah.
It was really nice.
The alumni
guys
base
that I
is
hadn't seen in
impressive.
30 years.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I saw a bunch of y'all at the Bobby Dodd Award thing
Yep.
at Tulane when he got the
Coach
award
of the
actually
Year.
given to him by Bill
Yeah.
Curry, the former great coach and great player. But the thing is, I saw all you guys. I mean, y'all were all there in support, and that's when I looked at this group. I'm like, this alumni base is strong, and they're united.
Yeah, it's look, winning helps, right?
Certainly does.
With everything.
Right.
But
Hey, winning is sexy.
that's right.
Losing is not sexy.
Everybody likes a winner.
All right.
But Coach Fritz, I mean, what else can you say about him? You've got to love him. And it was not an easy thing to accomplish. I
No.
mean, it took him a couple years. But if you don't love Coach Fritz, something's wrong.
You're not
with you.
American.
Something's
That's
wrong.
what I say.
He's old school, but I think the players love to play for him.
I'm going to tell you this. Fritz is a guy that I've gotten to know well. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've had him on this show, at least 7 or 8, and I've had him on radio way before me. Just one of the greatest. Returns your calls immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the hallmark of just a great man. And I mean, he's done so many good things. He sacrificed a lot of money to stay here instead of going to Georgia Tech after the successful season. And as a former agent, I'm going to say this, I've said it before, I'd be not doing my job if I didn't demand that my client go look at these offers, right?
Right,
And
of
he looked
course.
at them, weighed them, and demanded that and Georgia Tech gave him a very nice offer, which he won't talk about. But the fact is that he demanded that he coach these guys in the championship game, period. It wasn't even part of the discussion. And they said, no, we need to get onto the portal. And then he helped out his assistant so much. He's just that kind of man. And if I was a Tulane alum, I'd be so proud to have him as a coach.
Oh, I'm ecstatic. I mean, he is everything that you want to lead a program at your university. He's put the time in. He's worked hard with those kids, and like you said, he's unselfish. He's looking out for his assistant coaches more so than himself.
He
Not
really
many
has.
people would do that.
No, he really has. And I mean, I know that's not documented, but I know for a fact, and you do as well, that he sacrificed a ton and to help those assistants and to stay here at Tulane. Hey, we have a new sponsor, my man Desi Vega, who is another Tulane guy. I don't know, y'all crossed paths much with me. I think his freshman year might have been your senior year.
Yeah.
But he played some baseball. A little, but he was there. But he owns a couple of steakhouses, and this is one of them, Mr. John's Steakhouse, which is one of my all-time favorites, and I'm so happy they're part of our family now. So here you go. That's a little. And Mr. John's, that might be a starter because it gets up there, but it certainly helps. And then I know you know about Task Performance, right?
I love it. I love that shirt.
A Tulane grad did that
Yep.
here. And Reggie, it's been a pleasure. You got to get on this helmet. We got to get you a spot. Where do we negotiate? Give me something where I can see
We
you.
got it. We got it.
You got your spot.
Let's go right here. Oh, perfect.
That's Reggie Reginelli. Been wanting to have him on for a long time. He's back, and I'm happy to have him on this show finally for the first time in 7.5 years since I did it. I remember I was looking at some old stuff. I had him on radio back. That's when I first came back 10 years ago. I don't even know if you remember that, Reggie, but we've had some fun before. But congratulations on your career and also on great things going on with your businesses now, and also the Tulane Green Wave. Congratulations to them and Coach Willie Fritz. Hey, we're going to switch gears a little bit, but not a lot. We're going to talk about what else, the other teams that are doing great here right now. The Saints got their win. LSU's back on track, and maybe even a little Pelicans, because we're going to have Jack Culotta. He's been with G&O, and we're going to have him talking all that stuff. And don't forget, we're going to talk NOLA Gold later. I was supposed to have Deuce McAllister on the show. I wanted to have the Ole Miss Tulane running back thing. Deuce couldn't come. He's going to come next week. But we're going to have Van Gallinghouse. And I know a lot of people from Newman that knew Reggie know who Van is. Now he is the CEO of the NOLA Gold Major League Rugby team. So all that's coming up next on Primetime Sports.
baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll. At the mid-city lanes, the home of rock and roll.
Inspired by the culture and spirit of New Orleans, the contemporary abstract and figurative work of Tony Mose and the urban expressionist art and jewelry of Tracy Mose are now on display and available at Esom Art Galleries. Esom Art Galleries are artist-owned and are located in Uptown New Orleans on Magazine Street and on Royal Street in the heart of the French Quarter. Esom Art Galleries, inspiration from the soul of New Orleans.
Hey, welcome back to Primetime Sports. And how about Reggie Reginelli? It was a treat for me to have him finally on this show. He hadn't done media in 6 or 7 years, and I used to have him on the radio show back when I was with ESPN. But man, Reggie, as a kid, this is one of those guys I looked up to. There was Archie Manning, Pistol Pete, and of course, like guys like Steve Foley of Tulane. But Reggie's closer to my age, but we all knew who he was. But moving forward, we're going to continue talking football. We're going to go to the pro level right now at first, because we're going to talk about the New Orleans Saints. And I don't want to hear anybody say that's an ugly win. A win's a win in the NFL, and that defense was far from ugly. They looked great, and Derek Carr came through when it mattered. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the Saints season. We're also going to touch on LSU with my man Jack Culotta Jr. I've had him on before. He's a young reporter, and now he's moving up in the ranks. He was a G&O for a while, and now he's going to do some on-air stuff, and he's going to have his Talk Culotta brand. But here he is again. Jack, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well, man.
Good to see you. I'm loving the rise. Loving watching you go. How's it going for you?
I appreciate it. It's it's been a heck of a journey, and I'm just looking forward to continuing to cover the Saints, LSU, and Tulane football.
I'm impressed with how much you've embraced it, because I remember the days 2 years ago you were asking me how do I get a credential, and I said I'm going to make sure this happens. And you've taken that little step and just shot up. And then all of a sudden I'm seeing you behind Ed Daniels with a camera at a Tulane game, and then I'm up at Baton Rouge and I'm seeing you up there. You're doing what it takes, man. I'm impressed and I'm proud of you.
Thank you. And look, no matter what brand or company that I work for, I want to continue to cover New Orleans sports and show respect to the world that is New Orleans and Louisiana sports, because it is so prominent, and this is the perfect time of year to get on the bandwagon.
It's the best. I mean, you have college basketball's around the corner. Everybody knows college football, and the Saints are already here. And this is why this show is here. This is why I lived away for 30 years, but I never wanted to not come back to New Orleans. And when I saw that there was a dearth of maybe something like this, I said, we got to celebrate what's going on. The past heroes like Reggie, the Burt Joneses and Archie Mannings, but also, the current guys. And you're the next guy doing that, so I appreciate you doing it. But let's start with the Saints. What's your take, without me even asking a question, on the game on Sunday?
Well, you said it wasn't an ugly win. I would say it was an ugly first half performance, specifically from the offensive line. I think once Pete Carmichael and the offensive staff figured out that you need to put Foster Moreau, a tight end or a fullback, to hit that defensive end so that Trevor Penning could have a little bit of time. That was my biggest takeaway. If you give Derek Carr time to move in the pocket, he's going to deliver to a wide range and a very diverse pass-catching core. Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, how are you not excited about these speedy second-year receivers? And look, the offensive line is going to be the biggest issue for this Saints team, but if you utilize that fullback, Adam Prentice, everybody wonders, why did they keep
the fullback?
Because
not many have him anymore, right?
On this roster. That's why. And why do you keep Foster Moreau and 4 tight ends? That's why, to help out this kind of young, new offensive line.
Yeah, tell me about the line, because, Penning is all anybody's talking about the last few days, and I know good friends with Doug Marrone, who's a former head coach in the NFL, but he's the offensive line coach, and he was excited when they got Penning, okay? I was living in the same building, and we talk all the time. What happened in this game? Because, is this guy capable of being a star in the NFL?
I think he's an above-average run blocker, and as of right now, an average pass blocker. So I think what's cool about the Saints offensive line is that you had these guys, Trevor Penning, this young, hyped-up rookie, and James Hurst, this veteran, competing for the left tackle position last season, and now they're lined up against each other because Hurst won the job as left guard over Andrus Peat. Now it's up to Penning to protect Derek Carr's blind side, and I think the pass blocking is going to take some time, but I also think you need to pump the brakes on, worrying about Penning too much, because the Titans' defensive line is one of the better defensive line cores in the NFL.
It's a good football team.
Yeah.
That's what I keep telling people. This is one of the best teams on this schedule. The Saints were blessed this year with one of their easier schedules, if not the easiest I've seen in memory. Because, I'm not saying anything can change in an NFL season. A team you think is not going to be good turns out to be good. But the fact is I look down the schedule some years and it's daunting. You got one of the better teams out of the way, a team that was in the AFC Championship game just 2 seasons ago. This is a really solid football team with a great running game. And what I saw, because I was coming back from California on a flight from doing the USC game, so I didn't see much of the first half you're talking about, but what I saw in the second half is them stymieing this guy right here, Derrick Henry. The first half, I have him on a fantasy team, so I'm following him, and I'm like, oh, he's going off.
Right.
Well, he got minus points in the second half. So the Saints defense obviously showed up when it counted.
And Demario Davis is my MVP of the defense, despite the fact that you had picks from Marshawn Lattimore, Marcus May, and Paulson Adebo. It's easy to say, okay, Lattimore's the MVP of the defense, but Demario Davis was all over Derrick Henry. He was living rent-free in Derrick Henry's head.
I love that.
Look, he is this Saints team. He epitomizes what it's like to be a New Orleans Saint, to be a believer, to be a faith-driven football player.
I love that what you said, because I was moved by what he said in the postgame. I've been to several of his prayer breakfasts, and he is an impactful, powerful speaker. He's a powerful teammate. I see, we don't get to go to the locker room. At least I'm not doing it this year, but I was in the locker room every year. And since COVID, it's been, not much. But even before that, this guy is a powerful presence in the locker room. He gets everybody's attention. Cam Jordan was the fun-loving guy in the locker room. Equally powerful, but in a different way. But these guys have the respect of their team and this defense. And then, listen, I'm going to say this. I'm going to have 3 co-MVPs on that defense, because Lattimore is back to the Lattimore, at least appears to be, that he was the first couple of years.
No doubt.
Kind of read his press clippings a little bit, and he wasn't the same player. Cam Jordan is an ageless wonder, and thank goodness they kept him here for the rest of his career, because I love that guy. And then Demario Davis, those two, Davis and Lattimore, I think are the best in their position right now in the NFL. I really do, or at least right there, okay? And Cam is still steady as they come. So when you look at the defense as a whole and the other parts around it, can this consistently be a top 5 defense in the NFL like they think they can be?
I would say after overreaction week 1, it's a top 3 defense.
Okay.
And I would go so far as to say,
we saw 2 good ones last night.
Yep. I would go so far as to say if the AFC has the best 3 offenses in the NFL with the Bengals, the Chiefs, and the Bills, and maybe the Dolphins, the NFC has the best 3 defenses, in my opinion.
Philly, San Francisco?
No, I would say Cowboys, 49ers, and Saints. And then after the Jets' performance on Monday night, they're a close 3rd or 4th.
Yeah,
but no, the Saints have established themselves as a top 10 defense over the last few years. I think they're entering that top 5 number this year.
Yeah, that's nice. Allen's calling plays again. Okay, I think that's big.
Game changer.
They had a stat or a graphic, and I, as a guy that did graphics for years for Braves and Hawks and things like that, I love when I see things I didn't know, right? And I saw the 5 guys that are calling plays as head coaches on defense. You see the guys like Peyton was calling plays a lot on offense. You don't realize the guys on defense, and you had, like Staley and Chargers. He might want to give up that job after what the Dolphins did to them. But, Bowles, and there's some names out there, right? And I loved seeing Dennis Allen do it, because this is what made him great. And I'm going to say this, I was around him a lot when he was the defensive backs coach, and then he was the defensive coordinator. This guy has a brain and a mind like you don't really see a whole lot in the NFL. That's why I wanted everybody to give him a chance, because once he's able to let his defense be, there were subtle differences in that defense that I noticed that I haven't seen, particularly last year when they would give up some stuff. And I think it's a result of him actually being hands-on and calling the plays.
And DA still has so many skeptics because he's so good at calling plays and managing a defense that people think, why not just be a defensive coordinator? But the exciting thing about it is when I asked Demario Davis in the locker room last week, does it feel more like DA's team? Demario Davis said simply, it is DA's team, and what he's done over this past offseason on both the offensive, the defensive, and the special team side of the ball gives him more of a footprint and makes it feel more like Dennis Allen and not Sean Payton's team.
I like that. I like that a lot. Hey, before I get to the Tigers, one question. Do you like the Saints more or less after seeing what you saw on Sunday?
I like them more because of their second half response, their ability to play stout defense against an extremely hard running back to tackle. They made Ryan Tannehill look like a college quarterback. And
they did.
And
yeah.
Imagine what this offense looks like with the playmaker that is Alvin Kamara. So what they were able to do in the second half on the offensive side and throughout the game on the defensive side makes me like them more after game one.
Tannehill started 144 games in the NFL. This is his worst passer rating in his career.
By far.
And people can dog him all they want. He had some good seasons.
Oh, yeah.
He took them to the championship game. They made him look silly, and I love what you said about that. Hey, let's move to the Tigers. We all know what we saw, the night before Labor Day. It wasn't pretty. But people forget that game was still tied with like 5 minutes to go in the third quarter, right? And then nobody remembers that because they just blew the doors open, correct? Right. But then the first quarter happened, and now I'm doing my own game. We were in pre-prep. My game didn't start till 9:45 local. Right. It's on the West Coast. But the fact is like, I'm sitting here like, how did we give up 10 points already? How we all of a sudden at halftime we're giving up 260 yards. I'm like, what is going on? And then I saw the second half. I think the offense just scored every time they had the ball. But give me your honest take on this LSU team and what you've seen after 2 games. And particularly, let's focus on what just happened, because we all know what happened in Florida State.
If you're an LSU fan, relax.
Yeah.
This team, I'm not saying they will go 11-1, but there's not a game on that schedule that you scratch off. And Brian Kelly has shown a formula for success in the transfer portal and a formula for success after losing to Florida State. It's already happened before.
Yeah.
We know what it can look like. My biggest takeaway is when it's 14-10 against Grambling, and people go on Twitter and say, fire Brian Kelly, cut Jaden Daniels, put in Nussmeier. It's like they ended up winning the game 72-10 and dominating on every facet. So if you give Jaden Daniels the chance for other runners, Josh Williams, Noah Cain, Logan Diggs from Notre Dame, a transfer, trust in that Brian Kelly system, let all these guys run the ball, and I think this offense can be dominant.
Derek Schaefer might be right, and I never thought I'd say this, because 2 years ago he said, Jack Culotta Jr. is a mini you, Scott, and that's exactly what I tell people. I said, RELAX, relax, okay? I was equally disappointed after Florida State last year. I was not on board with the Brian Kelly hire, but he sat in that chair where you are, and he convinced me. Like, I was sitting here looking at him like, I had you pegged wrong. I thought you were a different dude. I talked to him a 20-minute interview, supposedly went 40 minutes. Because I was in, and I believe like you believe. I'm not saying they're going to win the next 10, right, and go 11-1 like you, but you're not fearing Alabama. You're not. I mean, they're great, okay? No. They got beat by a better team, but they're still great. But the fact is that he's proven to me at least have trust in him. You know how the Saints would have some issues and they do some things, but hey, you end up trusting them because you saw the formula already. And that's, although he hasn't won a national championship yet, obviously, and I say yet because I believe he will, but the fact is that I have trust in this team, and I think they're going to do just fine. You just got to let the coach do his job.
First of all, I can't be a mini Scott Alexander because I can't grow a beard, okay? Well, I can't. It just looks bad. But
I'm not saying this looks good. All right.
But I didn't say it looks good either.
I know you did.
But Brian Kelly's a machine. I mean, we went up for an exclusive interview with Ed Daniels before the Florida State game. He is so time and schedule oriented.
Yes.
He answers everything just the way you expect to, and in a transparent way. He tells his team exactly what he expects, and he makes sure that he gets what he expects. He is a guy that you can trust to take a loss in week 1 and go ahead and beat Mississippi State this week, and I think you silence all the doubters, because LSU at 2-1 with an SEC West that is losing quite a few games to Power 5 teams, the door's wide open.
It's wide open, but it's not easy. That's the other thing. People get into this thing where, well, Texas A&M lost to Miami, you should beat them. Every week's different. We've seen that. The SEC, they're going to come. Auburn should have lost to Cal, right? But Cal's not as bad. So this is going to be a competitive year. I'm just glad they're in the talk again. Because, there was some time, they kind of, for 2 years, they were out of the talk, right? After the championship. So it's nice to be back. Jack, it's been great. Always love having you. Hey, I have no doubts of your future. It's going to be unbelievably bright.
Thank you, brother.
But here, we got 2 things for you. You like these Taz shirts?
I absolutely love them. I wear them all the time, especially to work out. They're great.
Same here. I love them too. That's a brand new color. That's called the Heather Chambray. I like that name.
It's beautiful.
Heather Chambray. I like saying Chambray. I don't know why. And this is Shays Delachaise, but also can be used at Delachaise. There you go, my friend. That's Jack Culotta.
Thank you so much, Scott.
Thank you for the Saints and LSU talk. I needed that. I got my fix, and now I feel better about it. I appreciate you. Hey, last but certainly not least, an old friend who's now the CEO of one of my favorite organizations on earth. It's called the NOLA Gold Major League Rugby team. I love rugby now. I was a part of that organization for 2.5 years. We're going to see where it's going right now with Van Gallinghouse coming up next on Primetime Sports.
Can I tell you a cat joke? Just kidding.
Welcome back to Primetime Sports. I tell you, we're switching gears totally to the original football. That's right. Rugby was the precursor to football. Check it up, ask somebody or Google, but I didn't know that either until I got involved back in 2018, and I was involved to late 18 all the way through late March, early April of 2021, and I had a great time in those 2.5 years. I love the NOLA Gold organization. This is Major League Rugby. I want to stress this. This isn't club rugby like I only knew about. The LSU guys, the Tulane guys, all great guys, but these aren't world-class athletes at those places. This is Olympians from around the world, from Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, South America, the United Kingdom. They're from everywhere, and rugby is the second biggest sport in the world behind soccer. The Rugby World Cup is going on right now. The second most watched event in the world behind the World Cup of Soccer. 900 million people watch it. It's in France right now. When I started, it was in Japan, but guess where it's coming in 8 years? It's coming to America. And just like they do for World Cup Soccer, they play in a bunch of different cities, and we're going to talk about that with the CEO, Van Gallinghouse. How are you, my friend?
Good, Scott. How are you?
When I heard that you were going to step into this role, I was ecstatic for the team. I swear to God, I know you don't have any sports management experience, but you've had a lot of sports experience. You've been one of the biggest advertisers in the town. You know all the big players in town. And it just clicked to me when I heard that you're going to do it. This is a natural fit. Are you excited about your gig?
Oh, I'm so excited, man. You know, as an entrepreneur and a marketing guy and somebody who's interested in sports, loves sports, just have embraced it and really starting to fall in love with the sport of rugby.
You know, it's interesting how we have steps in our lives, right? And I've seen you through it. I remember you were heavily invested with the Hornets when they got here. Alex Martin was a mutual friend. I knew Alex from my days with TNT and doing games. The Shaq years were big for them, so they were always on our network. And then when you guys became good friends, was that I know you were an athlete growing up too, but was that your first foray into professional sports, working with them as opposed to just loving watching them?
No, so actually my first client as an ad agency was Doug Thornton.
Oh, goodness.
You know, back it was the Sports Foundation, but also the Superdome. So Doug gave me the opportunity for some years to get involved with marketing and public relations for the Superdome, and then eventually, you know, the what is now the Smoothie King Center, and so handled all of that work for them for quite some time, and even made some pitches for him and for the state and the city for some major events like Super Bowls and Final Fours.
I always think about this since you said the Smoothie King Center. I produced the very first sporting event in it, but you probably wouldn't remember because it was still cinder block inside. It was bizarre. It was a Tulane NC State basketball game in the late 90s, or maybe it was definitely 3 years before the Hornets were here. And they were just trying to build this thing to attract an NBA team, right?
That's right.
And I remember being a New Orleans guy, like, oh my God, we're getting the NBA back. You and I grew up with Pistol Pete, the Jazz, and from 74 to 79. But I just remember, like, it looked like a mausoleum for sure. They had nothing finished on the inside, and I'm like, what is this thing? It's like called cinder block, and they hadn't put the fun stuff around it yet. But that's interesting. You were involved that early. I didn't know. But tell me how your foray into rugby has changed what you do. Like, I mean, because you mentioned your marketing, I mentioned your advertising. You're well known in that field in New Orleans and around the South too. But when you got into this, tell me what your role is with this team and how you got it.
So I was with the Sports Foundation, Greater New Orleans Sports Foundation.
Jay Cicero and those
Jay
guys.
Cicero.
Yeah.
My predecessor was Sam Joffre. He got a job offer that he couldn't refuse as the head of the host committee for Las Vegas Super Bowl.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so that position opened up, and Jay and I were talking, and it worked out where I came over there, and I was heading up all the sales and marketing to bring the big events to the city. And so that was kind of the foray for me to, meet Tim Falcon through our presentation.
The NOLA Gold owner.
NOLA Gold owner, Tim Falcon. So we were courting World Rugby for the Rugby World Cup 2031. Had just, we were in the depths of the 22 men's Final Four. And really didn't have a great amount of time to focus on it. And then once the Final Four was over, deadline was approaching for us to sign an MOU to say we're in as far as the city of New Orleans
For the World Cup of rugby.
To bid on.
Right.
So we would be open to bidding.
So that's how your relationship started with Tim Falcon.
That's right.
Well, so let me say this: World Cup. I mentioned when I teased you that this is the second most sporting event watched in the world. So, I mean, did that surprise you when you heard for the first time?
Yeah, it did.
It shocked me because I didn't.
Yeah,
know.
it did because like many others, I didn't know much about rugby, so it didn't take much research to understand what a huge sport this is. 500 million rabid fans across the world. They have
crazy, man.
132 nations that participate. Just a huge sport, everywhere other than the United States, which is soon to be a huge sport.
I agree with you. I loved it from the beginning. The camaraderie is unlike any other. Like, the fans hang out with the team after the game. It's one thing if you're hanging in college drinking. These are dudes that play in the Olympics. I have some of my dearest friends from those 2.5 years from around the world that I'm still in touch with. The Tristan Blewitts, Scotty Gale, these are guys, and Con Foley. These are dudes that were Olympians in their countries, and they're just great human beings. And I know you're going to see that more and more. You've seen it already.
Yep.
But when we're talking about New Orleans being a possible host town for the World Cup, that is a boon, not just for the rugby world, but for the New Orleans community, because so many eyeballs. I mean, so many. We're talking close to 1 billion will be on the games played here in the Superdome, correct? If they could pull it off.
Yeah, that's right. So the way it works, it's a tournament over 7 weeks, and there's anywhere between 9 and 12 cities that would qualify. Yeah. And then you bid on certain aspects of the tournament. Of course, we're going to get the finals or somewhere near the finals.
Absolutely.
That's our goal.
It's an international city, baby.
That's right. And New Orleans is perfectly situated and primed for this type of event. So, we're excited about the opportunity.
Let's talk about the goal, because I love the sport. I was part of the group that helped get them into
You were, thank you.
the Shrine on Airline, which we call the Gold Mine on Airline, and I love everything about it. Now, we just need to get fans in.
That's right.
Because once they get used to the sport, it took me a while. I'll be honest with you. It took me like 3 times watching it, and I still was not grasping it, but it's almost like that when you finally get onto a subject in studying in school and you can't get it, and all of a sudden the red light clicks, and when it clicked, I've been 100% on ever since, and I know that the rest of New Orleanians who love contact sports will be on board. So how do we get fans attracted to this and go to the Gold Mine on Airline on a regular basis?
Reach into my marketing experience, and it's such an amazing sport, and the ability to be able to identify those things that differentiate from other professional sports. and to demonstrate what those are. Obviously all sports have a great deal of respect, but that's one of the elements that is taught in rugby from kids throughout. And then this socialization of rugby, the fact that you just mentioned, we get together after the event. They run head on and at major collisions, sometime perhaps might go fisticuffs, but they get together afterwards and they just enjoy each other's company, and they're so respectful of one another. It's something that we need to get across to the market about how that could work.
It's amazing.
It's affordable. It's great value. You can go and park right now for free in the Shrine on Airline, the gold mine, and walk right in, 2 40-minute halves.
It's wonderful. It's 2 hours tops, and it's a great way to spend a day. Let me say this, which you mentioned, that's part of the camaraderie I was talking about in that sport, because I've seen little guys just like huge, and you don't have to be huge. It's like football. You get the fast guys too. Those are the guys that usually score the tries, right, instead of touchdowns. But the fact is that they will kill each other on the field, and it's not like, like if I've said this example before. Russell Westbrook is a guy in basketball, if you slighted him on the court, he's waiting for you outside the locker room. He wants to bust you up, and that is a fact. These guys, they're just arms around each other, drinking together, and I'm like, this is unbelievable. They want to kill each other, but that's it. They're gentlemen. It's a gentleman's game. And it's crazy to say that, but it is. These are all gentlemen for the most part. And you see Cam Dolan, one of my favorite human beings, 3-time World Cup player. We are blessed to have him on this squad, along with another guy we'll show you a little bit, JP Delahousse, who's from South Africa. Cam's from Naples, Florida. So he's a local American guy who represented our country in the World Cup 3 times. JP was a former league MVP. Okay, this is a stud. I mean, you see these athletes that can play anywhere in the world and make 6 to 7 figures easy. That's how they make. This is a new sport here, but when you look at character guys like this had to be a part of your decision to want to be a part of it.
Absolutely. So when I met some of the players, when I was talking to Tim and the group,
and Ryan Fitzgerald and the group, yeah,
Ryan Fitzgerald, the gang. It was really the people that helped to make the decision for me. Not only the players and the integrity of the players, the approachability, but just the staff. Amazing young group of folks that are so engaged. They love rugby. They love each other, and they're primed and positioned to go, really go after it and get it.
I love how you said that, because those guys work hard. I mean, when this makes it, and I know it will, I'm going to remember some of the humble beginnings at the rugby lodge over there on the West Bank, and these guys are just hustling, and most of them are still there. It's beautiful to see. I'm congrats. And Kane Thompson, who's now the coach, was a player back then. He was hanging out with all of us. And Ryan Fitzgerald, who I've known since his scout days. He was a scout for the Senior Bowl. He was the guy telling me what players I need to talk about, and now seeing that success. So congratulations on everything, my man. I've got some gifts for you here.
Appreciate it.
We got this rugby ball we want you to sign too.
All right.
We're gonna get this in black because that's what I got that in. I mean, shoot, I might get you in gold. Get you in gold because this is the goal. You'll be the first one signing that goal. Task Performance, and how about Mr. John's Steakhouse? Desi Vega, baby. Desi owns Desi's, Mr. John's, and about 8 more. Maybe not 8, but at least 7. There you go. Task Performance shirt. Do you have any of them?
Yes, sir. That's all I wear.
They're unbelievable, right?
I love them.
Good to see you, Van.
Thanks.
Congratulations. That's Van Gallinghouse. Get out there and support NOLA Gold Rugby. Google it up. Get some tickets. They're affordable for the whole family. Great show. Hey, Danielle, how about that? The people in the back, I got to give them Will's out, and these people took off like it was nothing. And they did a great show for me. I appreciate them. Alex is producing. Logan does what he does every single show. He just performs. And Danielle, I appreciate you very much. And also, of course, my man Jim Dotson and Ron Yeager. We'll see you next week. Deuce McAllister will be on right here on Primetime Sports.